All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to Music Talk. I'm Dave,
Mike.
or Otis today.
Yep.
Barney and Otis.
Otis Campbell.
Yep. We took a couple weeks off. I've been waiting for some CDs to come in. I ran across this one a few weeks ago. I think this album came out earlier in the year, and I've been hearing some people talk about this group, so I figured I might as well go ahead and go back and check them out. The album is called Fearless by a band named Crownlands. Front looks like this. And when you open it up, it brings you into this little world here. Yeah. Got the track listings on the back. Pretty cool cover, man. I mean, I really like the cover.
Yep.
Inside the cover of them, that's very kind of shadowy looking, sort of. And of course, you got their names, Cody Bowles or Bowles, Cody Bowles, probably.
Yeah, he's the vocalist and drummer.
And then Kevin Comeau.
Yeah.
Comeau.
Yeah, he's multi-instrumentalist in the band.
Yeah.
Now, Cody likes to play flute, I guess.
Yeah, it does say Native American flute on here.
Yeah.
And wind chimes.
Well,
I think that comes from their inspiration. He used to put that on his too. So the pamphlet comes with it. Looks like this. It's part of the world, the atmosphere that we're going to be rolling through. You got all the lyrics, which they're laid out well, man. White on black with some red in there. I can read everything pretty good. I mean, really good. Kind of small, but that's would be normal eyes would probably be fine. And then you got a picture of them a little more clear on this one. And then the album or CD looks like this. Kind of reminds me a little bit of some Roger Dean stuff, but it's not. Somebody by the name of Quinn Henderson doing all the paintings on here. So, everybody, I always heard this is the next Rush with Led Zeppelin singer and all this mess. And I'm like, that's some pretty big shoes to fill. So, I know me and you are probably going to have some differences on this.
Maybe slightly, slight differences, but yeah.
We're not going to be like fighting over it, probably. But some of the stuff, the way I think it sounds, might not be the way you do, or just vice versa. So, to me, it's like if you took two guys who've listened to Rush their whole life and said, go write a record with as many Rush riffs as you can. And this is what they did. Because, I mean, it's like I'm picked out 20 songs on here that are Rush riffs. I mean, direct lifts of their songs. And people are going to say, oh, no, I ain't that. But I'm telling you, I stopped listening to them because there was so many of them. I'm like, man, it's like, okay, well, that's from this song. That's from this. It's almost like taking pieces of all these songs and then jamming them together. And not even the music's is the same, but they've even got some of the same lyrics. The whole album concept is the same thing that Rush did with Hemispheres. Well, Farewell to Kings, Cygnus X1, Book 1 into Hemispheres, which is Cygnus X1, Book 2. And I mean, it's just, I'm looking at this CD and I'm thinking these guys totally ripped Rush off. That's it. That's how I'm looking at it. But then I'm listening to it and I'm like, but I like it though, because I love Rush, right?
Well, yeah, here's the thing that I like about it. It's a little bit more simple. It's a little bit more down to earth than what you had with with Rush. I mean, Neil Peart was all over all these different time signature changes, and he was full of riffs, and I mean, more props to him. I mean, the man was a master of his kit, These guys here are a little bit more on the simplistic side, but it's still on the prog rock side. And I love that. It makes it easier to listen to for the average person.
Yeah.
And it keeps prog rock alive, and more power to them,
Yeah.
And I do like the fact too that there were a couple of things that they did which actually it veered onto burning down the house, and, but it sounded like they were on helium, when they were doing it. But let me see, it was right way back, I mean, sound like Talking Heads, I mean, on helium. but
That one, man. Oh my God, when we get to that one. Anyway, um,
I'm sorry.
no, no. I mean, I'm glad you singled that one out in particular because I actually have a note next to that one
That's
that
the
I
only one
wanted to
I
make
can remember.
sure that I said this note of all of them. But so I'm really on the fence on this one, man, because I did like the music. I think I don't think he sounded a lot like Geddy Lee. I thought he sounded more like the guy from Greta Van Fleet than he did Geddy Lee. But there are parts where it sounds like the first couple records of Rush that you could hear that he's hitting those notes, those trying to do. But Geddy's voice, I don't know. It was definitely weirder in the early days, but it just had more substance to it to me. It wasn't just all there like it is on this. This is all upper range, mostly just
Yeah.
constant up there, right?
There were a couple of places where he was into the ballad mode, and they were a little bit more mellow, you know. Honestly though, I mean, I got to be right out front. I'm not a big fan of the vocal. I wasn't a big fan of Geddy Lee's vocals.
Right.
I could only take so much of it. It's that type of voice that,
That really high pitched
yeah, and it's not. I
on
don't
the
know.
edge.
It's
It's
kind
kind
of
of on the
weird.
edge, right?
Kind of weird. Yeah, it's not like a John Anderson from Yes. I could listen to John Anderson all day.
Well,
You
John
know.
Anderson's more like an angel singing,
Yeah.
where when you take some of Getty's earlier stuff and this guy's stuff, it's more like a strain or like almost a scream.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was right. Yeah. And that's why, earlier when we were talking before we started,
Mhm.
that's where I get this Geddy Lee thing from with him. I
Right.
mean, he's straining, and when he's hitting those high notes, he sounds like Geddy Lee was when he was hitting them, like in
Yeah.
Limelight and stuff,
Yeah.
it's like a scream, a yell. I don't know. I don't know the right word to put on it, but
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the same inflections,
Yeah, and I see why people are comparing them to Rush. Not only that they took so many riffs from Rush, but also the vocal thing. Because I mean, a lot of people had a problem with Geddy Lee's vocals. You know,
Mhm.
you talk to people that are like, I just couldn't get through the vocals.
Mhm.
Great band couldn't get through the vocals. So anyway, so we got the first song, which by the way, this album I think clocks in at like 59 minutes.
And
It seems like it's a longer than that, doesn't
first
it?
song, 18 minutes and almost 19 minutes.
I mean, it seemed like it's a 2-hour CD to me. It just seemed like it gone on forever. It was weird because some CDs are long, but they don't seem like they're that long. This one seems like a long CD.
How was the order of your song lineup that you were listening to? Because the first song on my lineup was Starlifter.
Right.
You know,
That's it. Yeah.
not
So you'll
Fearless
see a
Part
part
Two.
one later
Part
on.
One's way down the list.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I know. I don't, but it's called Context Fearless
yeah,
Part
we're
One,
not in
right?
Europe. We're not in Europe driving on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah. That was another thing I was going to say about it too later on is I don't understand why they did that. Almost like, you know, um,
I almost wonder if that's not the first cut on side two.
mm, I
I
don't
don't.
know, man. I think it's set up this way, and I want to say most of the songs kind of follow along with this whole concept, the whole album concept, really.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, a couple of them maybe not, like, the one you were talking about right way back. But yeah, I couldn't figure that out either because they start out with part two, and then later on the fifth, I think it's the fifth song is part one. So yeah, so I can see where you were probably confused on that, but in the track listing, that's the way it goes.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yes.
yeah, it starts out with Starlifter, Fearless Part Two, and basically this is the whole story of, you know, it's the typical analogy of okay, what's happening in the world, people overtaking land and all this stuff, right? So, but it's done in a context of, outer space, right?
Yeah.
Another planet, same kind of deal. They go through a black hole. Same thing Rush did with hemispheres, went through a black hole. There's this world that, you know, other planets are ruling it. Same thing as 2112. You know, it's very strange. I know my hand keeps going like this.
No, you're fine.
It's the Barney Fife in me.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll roll through these real quick. So we get Starlifter Fearless Part 2. Comes with the overture. Sounds like Styx at the beginning. Goes right into 2112. Cygnus X1 Book 1 from Farewell to Kings, then straight into Hemispheres. That's all the first song.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I'm like,
I mean, just the first part of the first song.
well, yeah, it's, I don't know.
Yeah, so the first part is called Overture. And at the very beginning, man, it reminded me a lot of Mr. Roboto. Ding,
Yeah.
ding, 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 ding. You know? And
Kind
then,
of, and I think I really think they purposely did all that because I heard a lot of inflections from, I mean, I even heard some Pink Floyd inflections,
Mhm.
yeah. Especially with synthesized bass lines and stuff, it's like, on Time, from Dark Side to Moon, I mean, there you
there's
go.
a lot of bass pedals, a lot of that, you know, you
Yeah.
got Genesis, you got, you know,
Right.
Michael
Right. I
Rutherford
mean,
doing all that stuff. So,
and that's in a sense, that's what I'm embracing about this album because they're putting it back out in our face again.
yeah.
And you know, I I would like to see prog rock really take off again. I really would.
Well, there's a lot of prog out there right now. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. Most of it's Mike Portnoy in some shape or form.
Yeah, well, I mean, those guys. I mean,
Portnoy's got 10 prog bands out right now.
right? Yeah, well, yeah.
All right, we'll get back on this real quick. We'll go through these. It's 9 sections, so there's 9 suites in this song. Is really
Yeah,
what it
it
is.
is.
So, you know, then you go into begin transmission. We're taking off now. You know, now we're hitting a little bit of moving pictures era of the Rush. You're getting the Camera Eye, Red Barchetta. Then you're going to throw in some Xanadu. Then we're doing the Fearless Awakens, and Fearless is the cat's name, right? He's the star. He's our hero, right?
Right.
He's the one that's going to save us. Which is basically, you know, somebody's got to save us. So might as well be fearless, right? And then, you know, we go to Departure. You're getting into some of the La Villa Strangiato, a lot of heavy bass pedal stuff here with the stuff going on in the back. And, you know, I'm not going to go into all the words, but basically, you know, we're heading out, right? We're going to go tear this machine apart. So then the next part is interfacing the machine. Sounded just like Too Much Time on My Hands from Styx to me on this one. You know, they threw that Styx in there. And then they used the riff from La Villa Strangiato very heavily here. It's really heavy on this song, which is fine. On the Journey part, though, let me go back one real quick. They threw in some Grace Under Pressure and Crest of Steel there, and they also threw in a little Triumph. I just want to let you know that too. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just hitting these bands, man. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You can see where their influences are. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I'm glad they're wearing it on the sleeve, because at least I don't know. I mean, we could sit here and pick it apart.
Yeah.
But you've got a whole new slew of people that are
Don't
picking
know
up
these songs.
on,
Yeah,
on that don't even know half the people we're talking about.
that's right. Yep. Yeah. So
Yep.
then we get to number 7, which is Requiem. It's real slow. He's got his voice is super high pitched on this one.
Oh my God.
And, I mean, it's way up there, man. Like your cat's probably ran out of the room, right? Then we get to the Battle of Starlifter. This is where it all happens. You know, we're doing the finale, which is just like the finale from 2112. And then it goes through some more hemispheres, and there's some part in the middle there that sounded just like Pink Floyd. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like, here's your Floyd influence right here.
Yep. Yep.
You know, you had a little Kansas going on in there, I heard. And then we get to the last part of the last suite, and it's, man, it reminded me so much. This is called Event Horizon, and it reminded me so much of the second to the last song on Hemispheres called Cygnus Bringer of Balance, right? It's like, so they ended it up just like Rush would have ended it too. It's like, okay, whatever. But it was a good 18 minutes, even though, I mean, it didn't seem like a long 18 minutes, really, because you had a lot of movements going on, right?
Right.
You had a lot of things happening.
There was actually a
Following
couple of
this.
there was a couple of times in the song where it actually stopped.
Mhm.
And it bled in to
Yep.
another movement. So, and to me, I'm like, it's another song. And then
Yep.
I'm looking at the list. No, same
It's the same
song.
song, right? I know it did
I'm
that.
like,
It did that twice, and I was
yeah,
like, which part am I on?" And then I was waiting, and then a couple of these went by quickly, right? It was like, okay, that didn't take long. Now we're on to the next part. So it's it's definitely a fun 18 minutes. You know, it brings me back because I'm listening to it, going, man, I remember listening to Rush doing this, and man, I remember
yep.
listening to this. So they're definitely doing like you're saying. They're bringing all these bands that they've been influenced by, and they're throwing them in here, man. And it's like, these are who influenced us. This is what this is what we're writing, and here
Mhm,
it is.
mhm, mhm.
So I thought it was very interesting because obviously with two people, a lot of overdubs, right? But there was never a part that seemed like they couldn't do it with the two, right? So they were conscious enough while they're recording this to be able to pull it off live.
Well, that's what they were saying. Uh, I did a little digging into their bio, and what's his name? The guitar player was talking about he had gotten an Omni uh, uh, synthesizer and all that stuff, and to where they could literally do, reach over and sample, hit a
Yeah.
sample and run with it. And they said that they could pretty much do all their material live.
Yeah,
Just
and it seems like they definitely were taking that into, consideration on some of these, which when we get to the end and I give you my goods and bads, I'll tell you a couple things that I felt about that. But anyway, it was a good, you know, fun time. It was a fun story. You got to follow Fearless through his, battle, try to save the world, all that stuff. So it's pretty cool, you know. Um, take it for what it's worth. It was pretty good, I thought.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes the vocals did get on my nerves a little bit because I still feel like I'm hearing a lot of Greta Van Fleet in it, but you know how I
Yeah.
feel about that guy. So we come to number 2, and this is called, now they're not really part of the first song, but I feel like a lot of it still follows it, you know, because they're still
Right.
making references, it seems, that are going back to it. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, their influences were, J.R.R. Tolkien,
mhm,
Gene Roddenberry,
right, right,
Star Trek, and they were all over the fictional world.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just kind of like Yes. I mean, actually, when you think about it, Yes was one of those. Well, they also too would
And
make
Zeppelin,
things about true things happening and twist the tail.
and you got Zeppelin always writing about the Hobbit and stuff. So
Yep. Yep.
Lord of the Rings. So number 2, Dreamer of the Dawn. This one was heavily Greta Van Fleet for me, but it also had a little bit of Permanent Wave sound from Rush, and it even talks about Different Strings, which is a song on there. But
Mhm.
anyway, it was kind of poppy to me, and I felt like this was the one that they were trying to do for a radio song because you had
Right.
that chorus there. They were trying to get the radio song, I believe. I don't
Right.
know what songs have been released on this or if there's any singles because I've never heard
I've
any
never
of this
heard of
stuff
them.
on a radio.
I've never heard of them before, and they've never have even on my Amazon feed. They've never popped up until I typed in their name. You
Yeah,
know, and normally, I mean, on new stuff, I'll get a list of new things to listen to and things like that. And of course, 90% of them, I don't even want to look at them. But
right. Yeah, I mean, I never heard of them either until this record, and I don't even really know how I ran across them, to tell you the truth. Somehow something must have come up on what
I
I was
could,
watching.
it might have been in a comment that we had on other videos or something.
I don't know. I just somehow I got veered over to them, and then I listened to one of their songs, and I was like, yeah, I could see, where people are saying that this could be Rush because people are always like, oh my God, is this Rush? I probably heard it on Sea of Tranquility if I had to guess, which by the way, great station. Um, Great
Yeah.
YouTube channel. So anyway, that was number 2. Number 3, The Shadow. And I thought this had a really catchy chorus to it. I like the chorus. It's an okay
Yep.
song, a lot of synth bass in this one, you know. Then we get to number 4. And this one, man, the note I have next to it is very annoying because the vocals, man, when he does that part where he's like, when you come around, gosh, man.
Sounds like he's on
I was like,
helium. You got a high voice on helium. To me, it sounded like the Talking Heads, on crack or something. I don't know.
man, the helium is right on the money, man. I mean, the helium is right on the money.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, that's a great that's a great analogy on that. He must have because I mean he's up there, and it is woof. And
Yeah.
then there's a couple parts of it that sound just like a song called Marathon off of Power Windows from Rush. I mean the keyboard parts are all identical, so especially the ending sounded like it, but I could not get over the vocals on this one.
It
This
had a
one,
really good punk twist to it. Yeah.
yeah, I like the music part, but
Yeah.
man, the vocals just got me. Mm.
Mhm.
So yeah, so number 5 we get to. This is the one we were talking about earlier, Context Fearless Part 1. So there's a bunch of Rush in this too. I could go into it, Hold Your Fire, Dick Deads and Armpits, all that, whatever. Not even gonna do it. But in the middle, they do this really cool trade-off where you get the bass and drums and the guitar, and they're all just trading off. It's really neat. I liked it. So there's a really good breakdown section where they do a lot of that, which I really
Mhm.
dug that so much. I liked a
Mhm.
lot of their instrumental sections because
Yeah.
they were rolling, man. They were cruising, right? And then
Yeah.
sometimes the vocals come in and it just took away from it a little bit for me. But anyway, so then we get to number 6, Reflections, and dude, that beginning is Xanadu 2.0. I mean, it is. I thought it was Xanadu. I thought it was a remake, and I'm like, man, it was so close to it, and then it jumps into something else, which sounds like Between the Wheels or something from Grace Under Pressure. But yeah, I was that beginning, man. If they didn't rip that one off of Rush, then I'll give you $100 right now. So, number 7 we get to is a nice acoustic piece. Had a little bit of elements of Rick Emmett from Triumph, a little bit of Brian YR from Zeppelin in there. So I thought it was pretty cool. I liked it because it was a change of pace.
Yeah.
And I love when people do acoustic solos on their records.
Yeah.
I always love when the guitar player actually does that. It gives us a piece, and that I miss that, honestly.
Well, I mean, there again, yes,
That exactly. Yes, Triumph.
the clap,
Yep. I mean, Rick Emmett just about always put an acoustic piece on every one of the Triumph records too. So,
Mhm.
which I always love, man, and I dig that. So, then we get to number 8, Lady of the Lake, and man, the way he sings this one reminds me of a Black Sabbath song. The phrasing of how he's doing it, it's like, man, that is like something maybe off of Sabotage or something.
Well, yeah, I
But the
would.
voice obviously was so much higher than what Ozzy would be at, but
The, the later Sabbath I never got into. I mean,
yeah,
I
but
was an early Sabbath follower.
yeah. Well, Sabotage I think it was something close to Sabotage, which was a decent song, Lady of the Lake. And this one I have seen pop up quite a bit on YouTube. So I don't know if this is a single, but this one seems to be. In fact, that thing you're playing behind you might be part of Lady of the Lake on your video back there, I think.
Yeah,
But
it could be. I mean, I don't know. I haven't listened to the sound of this. All this is a flash on their
yeah,
webpage.
yeah,
So
they do have like 3 or 4 videos now if you go searching for them where they're
right,
playing the instruments on there. It's pretty impressive. I mean, they're probably playing just air guitar in it and whatever, but
well, this is actually live performance
that
here.
is right there. Yeah. So I mean, they are doing it. There's nothing. I'm not going to take anything from their musicianship. So then we get to number 9, Citadel, and man, I think this is probably one of my favorite songs on the record. I really like this one.
Well, it had a good meaning to it. I mean, lyrically, it you know, it worked out. I mean, it was covering a lot of bases, and
The
yeah,
piano intro, man, I really liked it. I
uh-huh,
liked how it was a complete change from the whole record.
right.
You know, I just it had a great chorus. The chorus was really good.
Mhm,
And I just liked it. Something about that song, man. To me, it was a good one. So
right.
when I tell you I'm on the fence on this one, man, I mean, the reason I say that is because I guess I was trying to put a bar up there that everybody keeps talking about. It's a mix between Zeppelin and Rush, right? Which as soon as you hear that, the first thing you're gonna do is like, man, ain't no way, right? And then you're gonna look at it and say, you know, they gotta stop comparing these guys because they're never gonna be blah 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 blah, you know. So, but when I listened to this album the third or fourth time, I really started to just kind of focus on the music itself. And the
Yep.
guys can play, man. No
Oh
doubt
yeah.
about it. The dude can play the drums. And I
Yep.
mean, you know, the guy is a phenomenal musician, guitar, bass, keys. I think if he stuck to just the guitar or keys or guitar and keys, I think so. You know how I feel about guitar players that play bass, you know, and I always hear the guitar player playing bass
Like a guitar.
like a guitar. And there's a lot of that in this, which I know that's me, man. It's a thing I'll never be able to get past. But I just wish they would have brought in somebody else and played the bass. So Kevin can just concentrate on his guitars and keys. And I think it would have been a better I mean, I shouldn't say better, but I think it would have been a little more versatile,
Mhm.
right? You'd have been able to hear parts together more instead of because of the fact that he's doing it all and he's trying to be able to do it live, you're only going to have bass parts here and then you're going to have guitar parts here and then some keys here. And in the meantime, we'll have foot pedals for bass and, you know,
Well, one thing that you know, when you got a multi instrumentalist that's playing keys, um, for some reason, and I don't know, you know, I mean, I hope producers catch this stuff in the end before, you know, the final mix is done. But they can't stay out of the way of the left hand of a keyboard player on bass.
right.
You know, there's, and it's inevitable that you're going to have that problem. Like we had a keyboard player with us with Boo Hill that all he did was play with his right hand. I mean, once in a while he'd chord with his left hand,
Yeah.
but most of the stuff he did was just all right-handed work. You know, he forgot about the bass lines altogether. You know, because
Yeah.
everything was so all over the place. You know,
Right. Yeah.
but I mean, and it's like they were talking in the bio. Cody, he was talking about he really wants to step out front. They are looking to put a band together to put on the road
Yeah.
to do, and I'll probably put more of their ideas down to where they feel like they can reproduce it live. And I'm pretty sure that them being two people has been maintaining the way they're approaching things at this point.
Right.
Now, granted, you know, I can't help but think that they really do sound like a close cover band.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now I don't know where the initiation of that is coming from. Is it the band? Is it the two guys themselves, two musicians, or is it their
Well, I mean, you know, they were working with Terry Brown, who
right,
is was the producer for Rush for,
right,
you know, several albums.
and Cobb with
And
Rival
Dave
Sons?
Cobb, yeah. So
You
I
know,
didn't
so
hear a lot of the Dave Cobb in it though. To you know, I didn't hear a lot of the how he produces more than I heard a lot of Terry Brown, you know. Um
Dave
the
Cobb to me is more of a drummer's producer. You know, I mean, you listen
yeah,
to the Rival Sons stuff. I mean, he's really got that. He's got that rhythm section down.
right. So the guy that they called a producer on here is David Petrill.
Okay.
I think he was the main producer, but there was a lot of not a lot, but there was a handful of guys probably involved in it Terry Brown being one. So I think some
Right.
of that might have influenced some of the sound because I mean, you know, I'll say this, and I'll go through my goods and bads. They're great musicians, no doubt about it. It was recorded very well. I thought the record sounded great. I mean, the guitar sounds were awesome. Even all the synth bass parts they sounded good. You know, the drums sounded good. Everything sounded great. I wasn't a big fan of the vocals, but I don't think that's so much of how it was recorded. I think it's just his voice, you know, that's just the way it is. You know?
Which leads me back to the fact that, I mean, how else would you produce that voice
Right.
with what you got,
Right. Yeah.
Where else you going to put it,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Very good point. The bad stuff I will say is, and we kind of, you know, it's not really bad, but we kind of touched over that, you know, with the Terry Brown connection. I think they maybe sounded a little too close to Rush, music wise. You know, I think maybe they should have strayed a little further from trying to sound like Rush. At some points, the singer's voice was annoying to me. Just my opinion. Before anybody says anything. Some of the songs sounded similar, like we heard it already before earlier in the CD. So there was a lot of similarities, right?
Yep.
And I just felt like they needed another member or two. I mean, I'm not gonna trash these guys or anything, because really
I think
they're too good to trash. I mean, I'm not gonna trash them. They're great musicians, right?
I think they realize that, I really do. And also too, it seems like I read something about they want to be able to put more money into their live stage production.
Well, that's probably why there's only two of them, also, because when you get another member, you got to pay them, right?
Yeah,
So
well, you got to pay them, and yeah, today it's not cheap today.
no, and they're not really big yet, I don't believe. I mean, neither one of us has heard of them until, you know, a month ago, maybe.
Yeah. Well, they
So,
need to. Somebody needs to open the door and let them open up for them, get them down here in the lower 48. Because I mean, being up in Canada,
yeah,
I mean, you can still get a lot of airplay, but you're not going to get a big following unless you're opening the doors to a lot of these stadiums and stuff.
they would be a really good act to open for somebody like Steve Hackett's band,
Yeah.
or you know, on that genre, you know, where these guys are touring around doing these prog shows. I think they would be a good piece for a good prog festival for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where
Definitely
they
not.
are. I feel like there's a lot of Genesis in there, a lot of Yes in there. There's a lot of, you know, definitely Rush. You get some Zeppelin, you get some Pink Floyd, you get some Kansas, you get some Styx. I mean, they're hitting all the prog marks, right? I mean, you go down the checklist of a prog song, even the confusing words that you can't understand, right? That's how we know we're listening to prog. We can't understand the words, right? So,
Well, that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just like, okay. I mean, I've been into prog rock ever since I, first heard all reality is the Moody Blues.
yeah,
I mean, people don't can really stop and think about it, but they were really, really kind of the pioneers that walked into the prog rock side of things.
yeah,
Uh, Now, granted, a lot of their stuff is just pretty, mediocre as compared to a lot of the other prog rock that's out there. But then you wound up with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Yes, and King Crimson. You
yeah.
cannot leave King Crimson out of the mix. And
And they're still
I'm
going.
gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell you about a bad lineup. Okay, my introduction to King Crimson, I'd never heard of them, so I had tickets to Humble Pie. This is
Yeah.
a triple header. Humble Pie, King Crimson, and Alexis Corner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd heard of Alexis Corner. I knew who Humble Pie was. That's why I was there. I had no idea who King Crimson was. And they walked out on stage and they opened up with Circus. I was a fan from the moment on.
Yeah.
And when Humble Pie hit the stage, I was kind of bored.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to follow
It's
that, but
180 out from what I just listened to,
for sure.
But and that's what I'm saying. I'm going to give these guys props for keeping keeping within the realm of the prog rock scenario,
Yeah,
and keeping it listenable, you
right.
know, and putting it across in a fashion that you're not having to. It's not like you're trying to figure out a crossword puzzle, you know. I mean,
Yeah, I will
it's very
agree.
easy to listen.
I agree with you on the simplicity of the songs because it's not so
Yeah,
far out of the, not all over the place so much as you
right,
would be,
right.
because a lot of times we get lost listening to prog, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, they give us a bunch of little quick hitters too. You got, 4 or 5 minute songs in here as well as just one giant 20-minute one,
mhm,
so they're kind of hitting it all, I give it to them.
yeah, yeah,
Again, I'm not dogging this record at all. I mean, it caught me a little bit off guard because I never heard of them.
yeah,
I was hearing comparisons of them, what people were saying. So I'm going into it thinking, let's see if they really do sound like this, right? So then I'm like picking songs that they've taken from, and by saying that they took a lot of their riffs off from Rush, it's not like they're totally lifting them, even though there are a few that are direct lifts, but they've made it their own, so to speak, even though you can definitely tell where they got it from, which is fine.
yeah.
We're all going to write songs of who influences us. So, and if you're going to try to be somebody, hell, be the best you can be Rush, right?
Well, at least they're playing the riffs. They're not sampling.
Exactly. And I
You
mean,
know,
and these
uh,
guys are, that one dude, man, he's got to have like 6 arms and 6 legs or something because he's playing all this stuff. And you see it live, and he's doing it live. I mean, he's probably got a
yeah,
sound guy over there helping him do some triggering, but other than that, I mean, he's getting it. I don't know how the
yeah.
guy can play the drums and sing all that at the same time.
I know, I know. It is amazing. I mean, when you stop and think about all the music you're hearing and all the directions that it's going in, and it's just two guys, man.
Right.
You know.
Yep. And that's what I was saying earlier. If they had if they had a bass player, we could actually hear bass and guitar working together more instead of now I'm going to play the bass, now I'm going to play guitar, right? So if we had that one more guy in there, or girl, whatever, and you could have these elements going on all the time, and then you could really hold on
Yeah,
to it a little more.
but
So
I think it's what adds to the simplicity of the approach. And to me, I hope they don't lose that, because I do know that there are mentions of them putting a band together,
yeah,
from what I've read, and I hope they do, but I hope to hang on to the simplicity of it. You know, I really
I,
do.
I think they probably will because the parts where you had bass and the parts where you had guitar, if they were playing together, you wouldn't have lost either one. You would have just had a more completeness. So I feel like their writings may not get more complicated, but it could. I don't know. I just felt like a lot of times when where there were just, bass pedals that I would like to have heard a real bass, you know,
Yeah.
even
Well,
if
it
it,
would be nice so to hear somebody step in and take over a Chris Squire / Geddy Lee type role on the bass, and literally carry the music,
Mhm.
while the other instrumentalist is just highlighting things instead of being the melody maker.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
um, I mean,
I mean, it's impressive.
it would open a lot more doors. It would open a lot more doors for him.
I think you're right. Yeah. And it's impressive to hear all that come out of two people, like you said, man. There's a lot of music coming out of two people, you
Yeah,
know.
there is.
So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is,
So
and give him a lot of props.
yeah, I'm giving them a 7.5 on this, man. I like it. I like the record, you
Yeah,
know. So
yeah.
I don't hate it. So I'm going 7.5 on this because I think they're good. They're good, man.
Well, that's where I'm going with it too. Is a 7.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I got some little beefs with it, but I mean, these are personal things. These are not things I think it take away from it. I mean,
Mhm.
these are things that I'm looking at from the side of sitting on a drummer's throne. You know,
Right. And I feel like what you say, maybe this is their third record, second, third
yeah,
record. I mean, that's not bad, man.
yeah,
If you're putting this out on your second or third record, you know, I imagine the next couple ought to be freaking great. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing more from them.
Yeah,
And there is a void that needs to be filled. I mean, Rush left a big hole.
that's right.
And again, I was never a Rush fan. Don't get me wrong,
Yep.
but they did. They ruled prog rock here for a long time.
But you know, the thing about Rush too is they never got so far out there that you really got too lost in their music like some of the other prog bands, right? They always
Right.
seem to be able to pull out some hitters for you, you know, so you could follow them. They were more of a simplistic prog band, really, even though we're
Oh
really
yeah,
complicated. So
they were. I take and see, sitting in a drummer's throne, and Neil Peart wrote the biggest majority of their music. He probably
he
wrote it
definitely
all, I
he
think.
wrote the lyrics for sure, but yeah,
Yeah.
most of the music was the other two. But I'm sure it was, you know, they all
Well,
kind of did
it
really.
all to me centered around the big stadium hit them in the face scenario, the
Right.
way their music always came across to me.
Yeah.
And you know, I I'm not gonna I'm not gonna diss Rush, but there are times it's nice to hear a band sound like they could sit down at a bar and entertain you
Yeah.
and not kill you. you know, uh,
Yeah.
to me, most of their stuff was stadium rock.
Yeah. For
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
prog rock,
It was a big production. They had big productions. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So,
And that's what I'm hoping that these guys don't do.
yeah.
I'm hoping that they can keep it on the simpler side.
Yeah.
I mean, for them to say that they can do everything that you're hearing right now as a two piece tells me it could go a lot of different directions with some other band members.
For sure. Yep. So we'll have to see what happens with the next year or so.
Yeah, yeah. I hope they do extend the tour down here. I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to go see them, but I would like to see them
It
break
sounds like
through the
they're
lower.
starting to catch on more, you know. I think they're
I mean,
starting to get a good following. So all right, well, we'll wrap it up. Uh Fearless by Crown Lands.
yeah,
Pretty good record, man. I gave it a 7.5. Mike gave it a 7.5. You know, it's a
yep,
pretty good, hard hitting prog rock album. You know,
yeah.
go check it
Give
out.
it,
Let us know what
give it
y'all
a
think.
listen.
So,
Yeah,
all
give
right,
it a listen.
that's right. Until next time, y'all stay safe.
And peace out. Listen to the music. I gotta go.